Hey there. Welcome, welcome. What's up, everyone? It is Wednesday, November 21st, 2018, and this is a very special holiday edition of the A-Side Live Chat podcast. I hope all of you are having a wonderful little Wednesday out there. Happy early Thanksgiving to any of our American listeners. Hopefully, you guys' holidays this week are as stress-free as possible. I know this can be a very stressful time of week for some, so hey, I hope you guys enjoy it. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining us today. We certainly appreciate it. My name is Shaun Al-Shatti, and there is a ton to get to today. So with that, let me just bring in my guy, my other half out here, coming at you, as always, from the MMA Fighting Sweatbox in Los Angeles, Mr. Marc Raimondi. How are things, Marc? Any holiday plans?
People really seem to enjoy your intros, Shaun. People really like the upbeat nature of your welcomes. I don't personally, but everyone seems to like them, so I'll go along with it. It kind of makes me a little nauseous, but yeah, no, keep doing you. Oh, by the way, happy Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah, that's a very happy Thanksgiving. Thanks, man. I'm doing the best I can up here. We got low budget show, no intro, no anything. We're just figuring it out. I just got a cold open.
I appreciate your positivity. I don't share in it, but I do appreciate you for who you are. So thank you. That's my Thanksgiving. I am thankful for Shaun Al-Shatti, my pal, my co-host.
Oh, you're so sweet, Marc. You're so sweet. Hey, real quick. So Thanksgiving for me is a top 2 holiday. I have no responsibility on my plate. My fiance does all the cooking and everything for our family, and she has a lot of work. I kind of just I get to sit around and drink some champagne and hang out. I really like it. I get to eat, stuff my face. It's a top 2 holiday for me. Where's Thanksgiving lie for you?
When I was a kid, Thanksgiving was pretty high up there. I don't know if it is anymore. I do enjoy eating food, but if you can tell by our schedule, I am working desk tomorrow night, so I won't exactly be experiencing any fun holiday stuff. But it's fine. It's whatever. I work on holidays. I work on Christmas Day. I work on Thanksgiving Day. I work every damn day. Doesn't matter. It's all the same shit.
Aren't you just a little ray of sunshine?
Bah, humbug.
Oh my goodness.
I like Halloween personally.
Halloween? That's fine. I mean, Halloween kind of sucks more as an adult than a kid, but I digress. Well, hey, now that your positivity has just rained all over me and really
happy holidays
uplifted me. Let's get to it, man, because there's a ton to discuss today. We got the aftermath from the weekend. UFC's first ever show in Argentina, Santiago Ponzinibbio getting a big win there. Plus, the circus is coming to your town this weekend, Marc, with Liddell versus Ortiz 3, and we have a little bit something for that later. Nick Diaz is back, maybe? I don't know. And a whole lot more. But as we always say about this time, this is your guys' show. So whatever you guys want us to talk about, that's what we're going to talk about. So you can ask us a question on the MMA Fighting page below. Any question that gets 3 recommendations, those will turn green and get priority. Or you can ask us a question on Twitter using the hashtags the A-Side and Chat Rappers. Replay this podcast going up immediately on the show on YouTube. What? It looks like you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to remind everyone, as I tweeted earlier, if you listen later on, we will explain to you how you can win a free pass to watch Liddell versus Ortiz 3 on Saturday night on Fight TV. So stay tuned right here on the A-Side, and we will tell you how you can win that free pass.
Absolutely. And so this show, that's going to, like I said, this show's going to be up on iTunes afterwards, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you guys get your pods. If there's somewhere out there that you want to listen to it and it's not, let us know and we'll fix that immediately. And hey, with that, man, that's the intro. Let's get this train rolling. Let's dive into some holiday questions, man. You ready?
Oh, I'm ready. Born ready.
Well, hey, that's good because the first question of the day coming from the MMA Fighting page from Abdul Rif is addressing you, Marc Raimondi.
All caps.
All caps. Marc, why is the Nick Diaz news getting ignored? Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. So, Marc, why is the Nick Diaz news getting ignored? Is it getting ignored? I guess maybe a little bit.
Why all caps, bro? You mad? Jeez.
It's very urgent.
Abdel Rif. Breaking into my sleepy holiday week here. Yeah, it's not getting ignored. I think here's the situation. So last week, ESPN Brett Okamoto reported that the UFC is working on putting together Nick Diaz returning to the octagon for the first time since 2015 against Jorge Masvidal at UFC 235 in March. UFC is working on this. It's not finalized. It's not signed, according to Brett's reporting. So, of course, on our end, we're trying to confirm that this fight is going to happen. And that has been a hard thing to do from the Nick Diaz side of things. I have not heard much from Nick Diaz's team. He has not said anything about this on social media. So it has been hard to confirm Brett's reporting. I trust Brett. I think Brett is correct when he says the UFC is trying to finalize this fight. However, whether or not this fight actually happens, I don't know. Because until you hear from Nick Diaz, until you hear from the Diaz brothers, you are not 100% sure whether or not this is a real thing or not. You know what I mean? We've been there, done that with the Diazes. We know how things go. And I am fully confident that Jorge Masvidal and his team have agreed to this fight. I'm fully confident that Brett's reporting is solid, but you just don't know until the Diaz brothers come out and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. You can't really know for sure until Nick Diaz post something on social media. Look, the guy posts on social media frequently. He is prolific. Until Nick Diaz takes his phone from Hakkasan one night and puts on an Instagram story that he's fighting Jorge Masvidal in March at UFC 235, I cannot be 100% certain that is actually what's going to happen. So we're not ignoring it. We're just exercising caution as journalists as far as reporting this fight, because we don't know. I mean, there hasn't been like an official UFC announcement. Again, there hasn't been any confirmation from Diaz or his camp. So what can we do? We can talk about it the way we're talking about it now, but we're not ignoring it. We're acknowledging that there is still there are some question marks. I mean, frankly.
Yeah. I think that's the big thing, right? Because the initial reporting, and I echo everything you said about Brett's reporting. He's a good guy, fantastic reporter. He's very good at what he does. The initial reporting of the story mentioned Dana White saying that this is what the UFC was targeting. We have independently confirmed that Jorge Masvidal, like you said, that's the fight that he believes he has. That's the fight they want. That's the fight that that they're going for. But the UFC is attempting to book Nick Diaz is very different than Nick Diaz being booked. And you never know with these guys. You just never know. So that's been the part on our end is getting that confirmation from Nick Diaz, really nailing him down. Because Dana White can say a lot of things. And the UFC over the years have offered Nick Diaz fight after fight after fight, just like they've offered Nate Diaz fight after the fight after fight. They're contractually obligated to offer these fights. So that doesn't mean that it's actually finalized, though. And so this, with the Diaz brothers, you just never know, man. And so until we hear it from the horse's mouth, I think it's premature to say that fight is actually locked in and official. But it's certainly the one that the UFC is working towards. So let me transition to this. What do you think generally of the fight, Mark? Do you, if that's the one we get where Nick Diaz has been out, I think since 2015, maybe? Is that it? The Anderson Silva fight.
Yep.
If he's been out
2015,
basically almost going on 4 years at this point, because we're at the end of 2018. If he has been out that long, is that the fight that you would like to see him come back to? Is Jorge Masvidal versus Nick Diaz at the top of your wish list for Nick Diaz? That get you going?
It's a good question, and it's not the fight that I would have thought of first.
If you say Anderson Silva, I swear to God, I'll reach through this and slap you.
What are you talking about? Let me finish. Jorge Masvidal, who I have always been a fan of his fighting. I love watching that guy fight. I think he's great. I like hearing him talk. I think he's a really engaging character, but not one of the top 5 or so fighters I would have put on my wish list to see Nick Diaz fight in his return to the UFC. Another thing too to mention, Shaun, is that it is wholly possible that Nick Diaz and his team have agreed to the matchup, but the other question is, have they agreed to the money? Yeah, the money. Yeah, maybe Nick is all on board fighting Jorge Masvidal. We know the Diaz brothers will fight just about anybody. It doesn't even have to be in an octagon. Sometimes it can be out on the street or at a Combate Americas show. But the question is, have they agreed to the financial aspects of the deal? So to get back to your original question, Masvidal is not the top guy that I would say that I would kind of put on my list for Nick Diaz, but I'm not opposed to this fight. I think it could be a very interesting lead up and a very interesting fight. it's just a strange, like when you think Nick Diaz, you think of someone who has that star power, who could fight a guy like Anderson Silva, fight a guy who is another, like A-side, A-list type guy in a main event, even like a Conor McGregor. I mean, someone like that would be on the list. I mean, I don't even know what weight class Nick Diaz. His last fight was a 185. If you've seen photos of him recently, he looks very big and not fat. He looks fit, but also much bigger muscle wise. So I thought he would have returned maybe at 185. Masvidal is a 170 right now. So it was surprising when I heard it. Again, I think it could be an amazing fight, but it wouldn't be one of the first thoughts in my head when I hear Nick Diaz is coming back to the UFC.
Yeah, I see. I think my question about this, because that's what we've heard from Nick Diaz for years, right? Is he's not coming back unless it's for a big one.
Even like a GSP, yeah. I know that fight wasn't a great fight, in practice in the octagon, but the lead up was like one of my favorite lead ups to a fight of all time. And I would totally watch that again if that was on the table.
That's the part about this with me that I guess doesn't make a ton of sense, because that's what we've heard for, again, 3 going on 4 years at this point, is that he's not coming back unless it's something really worth his while, something really big. And hey, man, I love Jorge Masvidal. I love watching him fight. He's a very entertaining person. He's a great interview. He's always generous with his time. I just don't understand what fighting Jorge Masvidal does for Nick Diaz at this point. Jorge's been competing at 155, or I'm sorry, at 170. And he's been doing well, but I don't know that that's like a marquee matchup for Nick Diaz that really gets him some big payday or gets him some big spot. Jorge Masvidal is just kind of sort of in the mix at 170. He's not like one of the top guys right now. I don't really understand what that fight does for Nick Diaz, just in a general sense. Maybe he just wants to come back and compete, and if that's the case, that's awesome. Having Nick Diaz in the game is better than not having Nick Diaz in the game. You can say the same about his brother. I just don't understand, I guess, what the matchup would do for him. And again, I love Jorge Masvidal, man. I think he's super entertaining, but it just doesn't, that part of it doesn't make sense to me, especially after waiting 3 years for some level of a big fight, being offered title fights. He's been offered Tyron Woodley before. Like, I just don't understand this.
Here's another possible opponent for Diaz. How about Carlos Condit? I know he's got a fight coming up against Michael Chiesa in December.
That's the best bit of matchmaking that you've done on this show in like 3 months.
I completely disagree with you, but I do think there is some genius to that. I mean, look, that first fight is it is one of the more questioned decisions in UFC history. Condit is no longer really a top 170. We've seen him lose a few fights here. He's talked about retirement. Nick Diaz has been on sabbatical for 4 years. To me, they're at a very similar level where it would make sense. It's still a fight that has name value. It still has a fight that has violence potential, and there's a story there. To me, that would make more sense than a Jorge Masvidal.
I love that. I love that fight for Carlos too, especially where he is in his career. That's a really nice booking. Way to go, Marc.
Yeah, I mean, I think
you should feel proud of yourself for that one.
Yeah, I'll give myself a little pat on the back. From a Masvidal perspective, though, this is great. I mean, if they're able to get that fight, if Jorge and first round management, Abe and Malky Kawa are able to get that fight for Masvidal, that's tremendous. I mean, that's a great get for them on their side, because they get to fight Nick Diaz, who hasn't fought in almost 4 years. He's still a big name. A win for Masvidal in that fight is enormous. Even though Nick hasn't won in a very long time, there's still that name value. People know Nick Diaz. So from their perspective, gangbusters. From the Diaz perspective, I just don't know if he wants to do that. Hey, more power to him, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, hey, before we move on, really quickly, last thing to end this, what would you put the odds on that fight actually happening? If I was to tell you, like, 0% to 100%, where are you putting the odds for this fight to actually take place?
Of it actually happening? So the higher percentage means it'll happen. Is what
100% means your utmost confidence that it's going to happen.
I would say I'm at like 60%. I would say 60-40 it happens. I think it will happen. I just think that there are things that probably still need to get hammered out, but I do think it will eventually. I think it will happen.
Yeah, 65 was the number in my head, so I think I agree generally with your sentiments.
It's fair.
Well, hey, let's move on. Next
Yeah.
question is coming from Jay Tiller Jr. And he wants to ask about Bellator's tape delay, which was a very silly situation. With the Bellator tape delay nonsense, he writes, what are your thoughts on quote unquote spoilers? Don't you think that reporters have the duty to report results live and not reward Bellator by not relaying the results to the public in real time? It's 2018, not the 1990s. He's not wrong, man. It's hard to say. Obviously, he is referencing the Bellator card this past weekend that was in Israel, that took place in Israel, where Patricio Pitbull defended his featherweight title against Emmanuel Sanchez. He's not wrong, man. He's not wrong. That card was not viewable on any sense when it was taking place. I think it was tape delayed
for more than 24 hours.
Yeah, tape delayed for like 36 hours or 48 hours. Like, yeah. How ridiculous is this?
This is a sport. This is live sports, and there's just no way in 2018 live sports should be tape delayed for more than a day. It's just unacceptable. As far as the whole spoilers thing goes, we were not playing that game where we weren't going to release spoilers. But the fact of the matter is, there really wasn't anywhere for us to watch it. There just wasn't anywhere. There wasn't anywhere for us to even cover it last Thursday, unless we were actually on the ground in Israel, which we were not, obviously. And I think it's a disservice to a fighter like Patricio Pitbull, who has been in Bellator forever. He's maybe the best fighter in Bellator history. He's one of the best one of the best featherweights in the world, period. And to put him on tape delay, to obscure him like that is a shame. And I guess the ratings did well on, not well, but they did well enough on Paramount Network to kind of further Bellator's tape delay stuff. I mean, unless the rankings the ratings just tank for that Friday night time slot, it's going to continue to show Bellator they can put it there and put it on tape delay because the ratings are still good enough. Now, I would say stream it. How about streaming it on DAZN?
Wasn't that the point? Wasn't that one of the points of signing with DAZN, is that you don't have to do this now?
Stream it live on DAZN. And obviously there are things to discuss between DAZN and Paramount and Viacom and Bellator, but stream it live somewhere. Stream it live on DAZN when it's actually happening. It was on Thursday afternoon U.S. time, and then put it on Paramount Network on Friday night. So it's the best of both worlds. So the people who want to watch it live, who watch live sports, they watch it live on DAZN, and then the people who are going to tune in on a Friday night during prime time, they can watch it then. To me, that's a no-brainer. But for whatever reason, I don't know if it's contracts or what it is, but Bellator's, and I know it's an issue with Bellator in the UK. In the UK, it's constantly tape delayed for like a week. It's just crazy where we're at for all the great things that Bellator has done in 2018. And I think they've had, especially the latter half of the year, I think they've had a fantastic 2018. I feel like their momentum is really going in the right direction right now. The whole tape delay thing still boggles my mind. I feel like, I mean, how are we not watching this stuff live? It's 2018. There are so many mediums to put your stuff on live, and it hasn't happened for Bellator in certain cases.
And in a way, man, not even in a way, like it very directly hurts the fighters too, because like you said, Patricio Pitbull may be the best Bellator fighter ever, just in terms of like what he's been able to accomplish in that promotion over the course of X number of years. His accolades in that promotion far exceed guys like Gegard Mousasi or Rory McDonald or anything like that. It hurt. No, who watched that fight? Like, who actually watched that fight? Because we all knew the results on Thursday, more or less. I would be surprised if 20% of MMA fans watched that fight.
Yeah, probably. I was following results on Tapology. Tapology had the live results from that card, obviously on their site, which is a great site, by the way, Tapology. But as far as like actually viewing the fight, I couldn't watch it on Thursday. I would have, but it wasn't available to me. So it's just it just feels like, and I know that Bellator is sensitive to these criticisms, and believe me, they're coming from a good place. You know, they're coming from a good place. They're coming
I want to watch your product.
We want to watch the product, and we want to watch it when it's actually happening. No one wants to watch MMA on tape delay when you already know the results. No one really wants to do that. And you're going to find out the results. This is a digital age. It's 2018. You're going to find out the results. It's hard to keep spoilers away at this point. And I have no problem with media outlets putting out spoilers. I don't believe in spoilers when it comes to live sports. I don't believe
it's not a movie. It's not a movie. Like it's our job to actually.
It's live sports.
Yeah.
If it happens, it's reportable.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's move on.
Yeah, back to the MMA fighting comments section. This is gonna be a fun one. From Lucian, UFC's Donald Trump documentary.
Oh boy.
Before anything else, I hope these last fall days bring you nothing but joy. Thanks, Lucian. I apologize in advance if my question comes across a bit awkward, as I'm trying to make this as politically neutral as possible. As you may have seen or read, UFC streamed documentary about Donald Trump that is borderline fawning about him. Now, regardless of political opinions, have you ever seen the UFC putting themselves behind a political figure like this before? And why do you think they would do so here? Even when Dana White spoke at the RNC, the Republican National Convention, he stressed that it was as a private person, so this felt kind of weird for me. Shaun, your thoughts on the UFC's propaganda documentary about Donald Trump?
Well, propaganda is one way to put it. I think that's the correct way to put it. This should be fun because all of you guys love when we talk politics, even remotely on this show. There's always great feedback in that regard.
People hate talking politics more than they hate us talking about professional wrestling, and that's a high level of hate.
Well, you know, people are very sensitive. People are very, very sensitive to criticism of the president. It is quite a interesting thing. I will say, I mean, you got to call the documentary what it is. It's a propaganda film, more or less. Like, I understand. Okay, so I'll backtrack. To answer the actual question, no, I've never seen the UFC actually put their weight behind a political figure ever, really, in the way that they have done for Donald Trump. I mean, you just produced a documentary about him. I understand they go way back between the relationship with Dana White and Donald Trump from the very early days. I think it was like UFC 30 and 31 that were at the Trump Taj Mahal right after Dana White and the Fertittas bought the UFC. So I understand the relationship is there, but it is very strange to very publicly put their weight behind any political figure, nonetheless one so controversial at the current moment as our president. It does come off as just odd, I guess. It strikes me as very odd because when you watch that film, it is very propaganda-ish, if you just the tone of it.
Even the name of it.
Yeah.
Combatant in chief. Anyway, I get it in a sense because this is a unique situation. And if the question is why have they not done this before and why this is the first time, to me, that question is answered rather obviously because there is that relationship between Donald Trump and Dana White and the UFC and MMA. And Dana White has that loyalty going back many, many years where he felt like the UFC is in a tough spot. No one really wanted to do the UFC any favors at that point. No one wanted to help them out. And Donald Trump was there with a helping hand, and Dana White has that loyalty to him going back a long time, and they've kept that relationship. And apparently, Trump has been positive about the UFC for a long time. And
I mean, it's funny that all of this is glossing over the fact that Donald Trump basically like spearheaded one of the biggest competitors the UFC with affliction at a current time. But
certainly, but
whatever.
Yes, I mean, obviously that is true. He was part of the, I guess. I don't even know if he was a part owner, but he was part of that promotion, certainly for Affliction. It is a weird thing. It is strange, and it's not something the UFC's done before publicly. However, Dana White and the Fertitta brothers have been donating to political campaigns for a long time, sometimes with a lot of money. So they've kind of done it privately for a while on both sides, Republican and Democrat. Although I think it's been a lot more Republican lately. But it is strange to see. It has been strange to see all of like the press releases that we've gotten and all of like the tweets about this documentary. I feel like they promoted this documentary more than they have the other. They did 25 documentaries around the 25th anniversary, and I feel like I've seen more about this Donald Trump. I want to see more tweets about that Matt Hughes documentary that was phenomenal than the Donald Trump documentary personally. But then again, politically, Trump and I don't really align all that well. So maybe people in the UFC's fan base do want to see that Trump documentary. Maybe they're into it. I guess they probably are into it. I'm not into it. I don't think you're into it, but here we are.
I mean, you're not wrong in that I've seen more promotion for this. I guess 25 for 25. They're doing like a 30 for 30 type of thing for this one, and then I have for all of the other ones combined. which is weird because I like you, I've probably gotten like 4 press releases about it and like advanced screenings and stuff, and it's just like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. Read the room, or maybe they are reading the room, and we're just not reading the room. I'm sure the comments will certainly let us know.
They're reading the room, Shaun, but we're not in. We're in another room.
Maybe I'm sure the comments will certainly call very sensitive people getting very upset in the comments. So it'll be great.
I can't wait. Moving on. Back to the MMAfighting.com comments, and thank you again to Lucian for asking us that great question. From the Empire 91, predictions for Liddell Ortiz 3. Hey gents, what are your guesses for how well Liddell Ortiz 3 will do? Surely it won't do 200,000, correct? What do you think they did right/wrong in setting this up? Also, is there any hope for the A-side t-shirts before the holidays? I will address that last point. There are currently no plans to do the A-side t-shirts. Maybe in the future there will be, but right now there are no plans. I do appreciate the support, though, the Empire. Thank you very much for your interest in that. Hopefully one day we get to that point, but right now is probably not that day. But maybe next year's holiday. So anyway, Shaun.
I mean, if there's interest, we'll do it. That's more or less. If there's enough interest, we will certainly do it.
So yeah, so Shaun, the original question was about Liddell Ortiz 3. How many pay-per-view buys do you think it'll get?
Oh my God, man! I know we're giving away some Liddell Ortiz pay-per-views, but
those don't count as for the buy rate.
Oh yeah, oh my God, I do not think I can think of a event that has been more poorly promoted, more mismanaged, more just generally flubbed than this one, man. We've talked about this on this show, but when we were in Las Vegas in July and Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell had that impromptu stare down, and everyone went real crazy for it. It went viral really quickly. It really actually felt like, oh my God, Golden Boy might have something here. They might have like hit some kind of weird niche within this MMA community that everyone's going to be real into this. And it felt like there was an actual ceiling to maybe them hit a couple hundred or a couple hundred thousand pay-per-view buys. It has only been downhill from there. This has been the worst promotion for a fight like this that I have ever seen, ever. And a perfect encapsulation of that is yesterday when you were at the press conference yesterday in Inglewood. 45 seconds of Chuck Liddell speaking, 45 seconds of Tito Ortiz speaking. Oscar De La Hoya clearly having no idea what anything that was going on around him was about. He didn't know how to pronounce names. He's been called Chuck Liddell, Chuck Liddell 400 times in the promotion of this. If you cornered him, I don't think he could actually tell you a single undercard fighter on this card, maybe other than Tom Lawler. He basically looked like a 5th grader who went to school and didn't realize that he had to give a presentation in front of the class that day. Like it was painful. And I'm a boxing fan. I enjoy boxing, but I don't follow it closely. So I'm not attuned to maybe this is just how Oscar De La Hoya is as a promoter. Maybe he's just kind of a bad one in terms of public speaking.
Golden Boy does real well though. Golden Boy does well.
Man, I don't understand how, if that's how it is. And we said that it's frustrating for me because
Canelo just landed an enormous deal on DAZN.
Chuck Liddell? Oh, Canelo. I thought you said Liddell.
Canelo just landed an enormous deal on DAZN.
It is frustrating for me because when at the start of this whole thing, right after our first show after July, I said, I think this thing could really do well unless they go down the boxing route of promotion, which is very different than what MMA fans want and what MMA fans are used to. MMA fans don't care about this crappy boxing style oppressor because it's not actually oppressor. It's poorly written and oftentimes off-the-cuff speeches from people nobody cares about. I want to see the back and forth with Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz. That is the entire point of this fight. Is a grudge match between really old rivals who have gone back decades with their rivalry. I want to see them sniping back and forth at each other. That's really it. It's a circus match, and that's the circus. I want to see the lead-up. The lead-up, it was supposed to be more interesting than the actual fight because ultimately the fight is going to be a guy who was active relatively recently versus a man who's almost 50 and hasn't fought in 8 years. I wanted to just see the back and forth and them dredge up all the old stuff and just kind of get a bit of nostalgia there. And we got none of that. The only way we got that was in individual interviews, one-on-ones, apart from each other. So they would just say something and then somebody else would relay it to the next time they interviewed him, or these like minute-long crappy fake presser speeches. Like, I don't think that I can think of a fight that has been more poorly promoted. And yesterday was the ultimate tipping point where, because we felt it on the website, right? Because when I'm all over the place, but when we felt it on the website, because when this first started, these type of stories with Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz were doing pretty good traffic. Like, there was obviously interest in it. It has gone so far downhill in terms of the interest, just we can see from our own analytics. No one cares anymore, man. They've really killed this for MMA fans. And yesterday was the last chance for them to really drum up interest and do something interesting and get people like excited for this fight. And they totally blew it. Oscar De La Hoya totally blew it. And I feel bad. I feel really bad for Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz, because it feels like both of them can sense that this has been very poorly promoted. And I mean, I don't know if Tito was telling the truth when he said that the majority of his income is going to come from pay-per-view sales. I really hope he wasn't. I hope he was lying to us, man, because if that's true, I feel like he's going to be really unhappy once he gets his paycheck for this, because I don't think it's going to sell very well at all, man. We can talk about pay-per-view numbers after, but I'm so disappointed. I'm angry for those two guys because they deserve better.
Well, Liddell did tell me yesterday that this was a gamble taking this fight for him, because he kind of turned down higher guaranteed purses in other places and took this fight that was based on more on pay-per-view revenue, more on, I guess, percentage of the gate, more on those incentives and those bonuses that come with how much interest there is in the fight. And look, we've talked about this again a number of times. I felt like there was a buzz, like you said, in July when before the fight was even announced, there was some, I felt some heat behind this rivalry again. And it kind of, I don't know if it was all the MMA that happened in the fall, the Conor versus Khabib, and there's some fatigue. I do think that Golden Boy and Chuck and Tito have increased the amount of promotion in the last 2 weeks. I feel like they've done a ton of stuff. I've seen them in a lot of places.
But going from zero to actually doing things is not, like, you don't get credit for that. You did zero promotion for like 3 months.
Yeah, and I think that has hurt them, because they didn't really strike while the iron was hot. They kind of let it get cold. Now they're trying to make it hot again. I do think after being at the press conference and talking to those guys, I'm feeling it more. Like that interview that I did with Chuck Liddell yesterday was, I think, the best interview that and maybe I'm biased because I was the one conducting the interview, and I probably am biased, but there was a certain fire that I saw in him in that interview, and I would recommend going back and checking that out on MMAfighting.com and MMA Fighting's YouTube, where at the end of the interview, especially, like, I really felt like, wow, this guy is really passionate and he really wants to be here. And it's not just BS for him. He really wants to get back in there and fight. He said it makes him feel alive. And that was the most convincing. It was the most convinced I've been by the promotion of this fight yet to that point. I think Tito Ortiz, he's convinced me too, because I feel like he has had, there's motivation obviously for him because he's already lost to Chuck twice. So of course he wants to go back in there and get that win again. The Liddell part, I haven't, and I think a lot of people have not been convinced of why he's back doing this. And that was the first time that it's really been sold on me as to why he's back. As far as pay-per-view buys goes, hold on. I don't know.
Let me throw an over-under at you then.
Yeah.
So, God, I feel so bad for these dudes because they should deserve so much better than what I'm about to say. If I put the over-under,
these are two of the biggest names in the history of MMA. I mean, these are two of the most influential and popular names. I mean, they really, their influence in the mid-aughts and late aughts led MMA to its growth to where it is now, to where the UFC is selling for $4 billion. You know, these guys were key cogs in that wheel for a long time. Liddell was maybe the first mainstream star in MMA. You know, I mean, he was everywhere. He was on TV, he's on Entourage, you know. So yeah, I get what you're saying.
So the pay-per-view price has dropped already. I think it was initially going to be $60 or $50. It's now down to $40. You can get it on
$39.99. Right.
You get $20 on Fight TV, on Fight, I think. So if I put the pay-per-view over under at 50,000, which is not a lot. If I put it there, where are you taking, the over or the under? Because I still might take the under.
That's a good over-under, I would say. I think it'll be around that. And let's also preface that by saying that even UFC pay-per-views right now in today's day and age have a hard time cracking the 200 range if it's not a very well promoted or a card filled with big names. This card is Chuck versus Tito, obviously two of the bigger names, but they're well past, you know, when they were the hottest in terms of popularity. And the card below it doesn't have any big draws necessarily. I think the Tom Lawler versus Deron Win fight will be very good, but there are no big draws. You know, there's no big money draws on the undercard.
Not only are there no draws whatsoever, because you're right, I love Tom Lawler. That's a fight. Deron Win is a good prospect. I like that fight. Other than that, nothing. There's 18 fights on this card.
That's right.
Which I didn't realize that.
5 amateur fights.
Until he said that at the press conference, I didn't realize that. And as soon as he said that, it's just like, man, this is yet another example of what the hell are you doing, man?
Well, it's boxing. It's a boxing card. It's a boxing card that'll be in an MMA cage.
But that's what I'm saying, man. Read the room. Again, MMA fans aren't watching 18 fights, man. Especially 17.
Well, not all of them will even air. I think only the main card is airing.
I feel bad for people in the arena that are watching 18 fights. Like 13 is a long enough night for us. 18, especially like 13 high-level UFC world-class fights is a long enough night. 18 fights, most of whom you have not heard of the people. That's rough, man. So give me an over/under 50,000. I'm taking the under. What do you think?
I'm going to take the over, but not by a whole lot. And Tito Ortiz threw out the 200,000 mark, and again, like UFC pay-per-view at this point, it's a struggle to get 200,000. I think what did the Daniel Cormier versus Derek Lewis fight do at MSG? I mean, that only did a little bit over 200,000. Yeah. So I think it could have approached. When it first happened, I thought it maybe could have approached 100,000 because this is still Chuck Liddell versus Tito Ortiz. But I feel like for whatever reason, and maybe something changes on Friday, and maybe something happens at weigh-ins that kind of captures the imagination of MMA fans. But right now, as it is on you know, a day before Thanksgiving on Wednesday, I'm gonna say somewhere in the 50-60K range.
Well, hey, last thing before we move on, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Give me a grade for the promotion in this event for you, because if I was to give you my grade, it's either a D- or an F. And I'm not even trying to be a dick. It's just I feel bad for those two guys of how poorly this has been managed.
I would say a C, because those two guys have done a ton of media the last 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, they've done a ton of media. So I give them credit for finally getting out there and putting in that, you know, that last minute, that last week work. I think they've done the work, and I think those guys have tried their best. I just don't know if they were put in the best position. And promotion is way different in MMA than it is in boxing. And this has been a boxing promotion. I think this is what the Golden Boy does in boxing. It's just different. The UFC has kind of given MMA fans a certain expectation of things to expect as far as promotion goes and press conferences and that kind of thing. And boxing is totally different. So I think that there has been kind of a disconnect there. So I would say a C, because those guys have worked their butts off to get in front of cameras the last 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, hey, what's next?
Moving on to the MMAfighting.com comments section. We got from Zaku Kogeki. What's the deal with Khabib wanting to fight Conor in a boxing fight? Happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for all the content. You're welcome, Zaku Kogeki.
Hey, thank you. So what's the deal? So that's something I believe that's what that is coming from Khabib's father, right? I believe he's the one who first broached the boxing idea. I mean, you guys know exactly what it is, man. It's the McGregorification of the game. Like, that's all this is at this point, is people are just throwing out ideas and seeing if they'll stick on the wall, man. It's I don't like it. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that I'm enjoying sort of what's happening with it. Feels as though every time a fighter gets this red panty night, so to speak, it's this big payday, everything afterward kind of just becomes off the rails. And it's not one of those things like I'm not mad at people getting paid in this sport. You very much want these athletes to get paid a lot of money because they don't get paid much money at all. But the reaction to it is a little, I guess, underwhelming consistently. Like we're getting to the point with all of these guys now. With Nate Diaz, he hasn't fought since Khabib. Now there's this, although obviously the Nevada stuff has to happen, so nothing can really be booked. But like even this talk, man, like I just wish we could get back to, hey man, you beat Conor McGregor, now fight Tony Ferguson. Like that's all I want. That's all I desperately want. I just want to see Tony Ferguson versus Khabib. That's it.
Everyone is just trying to chase that money, and I think part of it from Khabib's dad's perspective is probably just the challenge of fighting McGregor in a sport that most people would think that McGregor has an advantage in, boxing, because he came up as a striker and Khabib is known for his wrestling. So I think part of it is that I think that would be, for them from a competitive standpoint, it would be cool for them to go in and beat McGregor at his own game, so to speak. So that would be, I mean, I guess that's where their perspective, where they're coming from. But also there's the money perspective, and that also kind of goes back to Liddell versus Ortiz, where Golden Boy is like giving them like a huge percentage of what the pay-per-view is going to do and what the gate is going to do. And that's how boxing works more than the UFC. Fighters don't get a big percentage like that of pay-per-view and about of the gate. If Khabib and McGregor were going to fight in boxing with a different promoter, with a different setup, they would make a lot more money than they did a few months ago in October for the UFC fight. They would. McGregor made almost 100 million for the Mayweather fight, and he said he'd make 50 million if it reached 3 million pay-per-view buys. Did not reach 3 million. It made 2.4. So you figure he probably made somewhere in the 30 million range, with 25 million, which is still obviously pretty damn good. But he made 100 million for Floyd. So they're chasing the money, and they're chasing something different. You know, they're chasing something unique and something historical. That's what everyone's doing right now. Everyone's trying to be a double champ, and they want to go into boxing. I mean, the regular UFC title fight, and maybe it's the UFC's fault for all these interim titles, just a regular old UFC title fight, which used to mean a whole lot and used to get a lot of buys on pay-per-view, has been watered down so much that people are trying to find different, unique ways to fight. Whether that's a double champ, a super fight, whether that's boxing, people are just trying to find ways to make more money and do something more historical than just a regular old UFC title fight.
Yeah, we got 50 minutes in already, and we got lots left to go. So we'll try to be a little quicker with the rest of these. Moving on, next one. This is for you, Mark, because I have no idea about anything to do with any of this.
Okay.
And this is coming from Lucian again, who's just a double troublemaker.
Prolific.
First the Trump question, and now he's going to pro wrestling.
Wow.
If anybody angry out there, be angry at Lucian.
Lucian's next question is going to be about religion. He's just coming up with all the controversial topics today.
So this one is Rousey's WWE promos. All right, we can do this. First of all, that Charlotte Rousey match and post-match brutality had no right to be that awesome, considering how little time they had to prepare for it. Then to the actual subject. As MMA journalist, of whom at least one has watched Rousey's presentation on the current product, how do you feel about the way they are presenting Rousey's UFC career persona? I mean, I understand that it is a storyline and character presentation, but it did for me feel really awkward to watch her diss other people as oversensitive and discuss how champions behaved. Is that really an angle that they take? Rousey dissing people for being oversensitive? That's hilarious.
That's right.
Also, the Millennium Man insult was not one of the most UFC, or was the Millennium Man insult not one of the most UFC Rousey things ever? That's news to me that they're using her to insult people for being oversensitive. That is interesting. But the floor is yours, Mark. I don't know anything about any of this. All you.
Right. So it is Rousey's character is, I guess, supposedly supposed to be a good guy, a babyface, but I think and maybe I'm completely wrong about this, but I feel like they have kind of tried to make her a bit polarizing in a sense, like the promos that she's cutting. And again, she's not there yet on the mic. She's not an amazing promo, and her promos sound a little bit like her trash talk in MMA, where it is kind of polarizing, and sometimes you're wondering like what. Sometimes it's just weird. Sometimes it's weird. And some of these promos have been a little bit weird. And I guess the question that Lucian is asking, she's brought so much of real life, of the UFC, to her character in WWE, that the lines are blurred as to what the character Ronda Rousey is and what the real person Ronda Rousey is. And it is weird to hear the character Ronda Rousey talk about stuff like being overly sensitive when we all know in the MMA world what happened when she lost to Holly Holm. So it is a bit strange, but part of me wonders, is this on purpose? Is she doing this purposely to be polarizing? I know from what I've heard from reports that Paul Heyman has been working with Rousey on her promo. So I wonder if some of this is by design to garner a reaction, to kind of work toward a possible heel turn. I don't know, but it's a weird world of wrestling, and her character has been very polarizing, and she got booed. Like, they've been building her as a babyface, and she got her butt kicked by Charlotte Flair with the kendo stick, which she got beat up pretty good. There were bruises, she was bleeding. And then they booed her when she got up. It was supposed to be like, oh, here's this sympathetic figure. She just got beat up, and she's getting back up to her feet, and she's leaving under her own power. And the LA crowd just booed her. And it's her hometown. They booed her, and they cheered Charlotte Flair. So wrestling fans are weird, like MMA fans are weird. But I will say this for Rousey. The character stuff and the promos have been a mixed bag. The actual in-ring ability has been off the charts for her experience level. She's really right away become an excellent in-ring wrestler. And man, she does not mind taking hard bumps and just getting her butt kicked. I mean, again, she got hit. She got beaten up pretty good with that kendo stick. That hurts. I know wrestling is fake, guys, but the blows still hurt when they connect. And those connected, you can see the bruises. It wasn't BS. It wasn't makeup. You can see the bruises after she got hit. So I give her a lot of credit for coming so far in a short amount of time. But I see Shaun nodding off over there, and I'll wrap this up. But yeah, it's been a mixed bag for Rousey in WWE so far. But overall, I think good as far as the in-ring stuff. All Any right. thoughts on this, Shaun?
I got a whole lot of nothing. So we're moving on.
All right.
To Blow with a lot of umlauts.
Yes.
That's a good name. MMA journalists / reporters. Oh, wait. Oh, actually, I missed one. I'm sorry. I skipped one. Next one's coming from Velozi. My mistake. Simple little question. Love the show, guys. Shaun's welcome at the beginning never fails to make me smile. Such a positive MFer you are. Hey, thank you. I hear. Did you say disgusting?
Oh, what? Oh, sorry. Oh, God.
I hear UFC commentators refer to in-fight stats as unofficial numbers. My question is, what makes a stat official, and what compels them to make the disclaimer that the stats they're quoting are unofficial every time? I've never seen any other sport make this distinction. Thanks for making my Wednesdays and occasional Tuesdays more entertaining. Hey, thank you so much for the kind words. So that's a simple one, and we probably don't need to spend a ton of time on this one. The unofficial, when they say unofficial, they mean it because the people in charge of keeping track, the fight metric people, they're basically they're in the back, and they have a little thing that they're basically just pushing to tally the strikes every time they see them in real time. But I mean, they're humans. That's very imprecise, and this is a very fast sport. So it's very easy to miss something or maybe misdiagnose something, say something was a leg kick when maybe it was a body kick or something like that. So that's why it's always I guess, yeah, that's why it's always said as unofficial, because after the fights, all those guys will go through, redo everything and make like an official tally that you'll then see sort of the day after or something like that. That's why often, I don't know if you guys check, there's sometimes controversies with close fights where maybe UFC.com will have X number of strikes landed versus X number of strikes landed, and then that number will change significantly the next day. That's just because they went through and did their actual real tally, because it is very, very difficult to sit there for 8 hours and be right on the mark every time somebody throws a strike. Like, next time you're watching a fight, try to sit there and count that, just even for like a full 15-minute fight, and you'll understand why it's unofficial, because it is extremely difficult what they do.
Also, fans, stop using stats, especially real-time stats, when you're judging fights. It doesn't work that way. It's just not a stat-based sport in that context. It's just not. You can hit someone with 100 light kicks, and the other guy can knock you out or knock you down, and that's what weighs more in the judging criteria. It's not about counting numbers in MMA. It's about damage. So stop that. Quit it.
Look at you.
Moving on.
So sassy today.
Yeah, I'm just getting in the holiday spirit. From BLOOOO with all umlauts over the O's. MMA journalists slash reporters seem very excited about the McGregor versus Cerrone matchup. The arguments they make fit just as well for McGregor versus Nate Diaz. So why is that matchup nowadays ignored? Did Mr. Diaz fall out of grace with the MMA reporters?
He's
sorry. Oh, was that on camera?
Not
me rolling my eyes?
He says, as I have a picture of Nate Diaz sitting right behind me. Also, I think that's the credential for the Nate Diaz fight. So that's great. I think this answer here is simple, right? Because like you can revisit the Nate Diaz fight at any time with Conor, but doing it right now would literally be doing it at the lowest possible moment for both guys. Now, Conor hasn't won a fight in a while. He just got very thoroughly beaten up by Khabib Nurmagomedov, and Nate Diaz hasn't fought in general. Like if he would have fought in New York and put up a good performance, I think then you could have transitioned to the trilogy fight, and there would have been a lot of smoke and hype behind it. But right now, man, you're catching it at the lowest possible moment for both guys. So it's at a point where it's been so much time and we have so much separation from it. It feels like both of them need to actually fight somebody else before they can kind of join forces and do some sort of mega trilogy fight.
Yeah, to me, the Cerrone fight right now just makes a little bit more sense because we just saw Cerrone beat Mike Perry in the first round. It was an emotional moment. It was a great story. He's very hot right now, Cowboy. He's at the hottest he's been in some time. And because of his name, which Nate Diaz also has, but because of his name and because of his fighting style, that's a fight that I think is very attractive for McGregor at this point in time. And McGregor, again, needs someone who maybe is not ranked in the top 3, who's not going to be a tough wrestler type of matchup for him. Because look, I mean, if you're a promoter, you're trying to get this guy a fight that he can win and go on and fight again for a title or fight another big fight, headline another big pay-per-view. You have to, there is a certain protection that you have to have from a business perspective. I know fans don't want to hear that, but yeah, the UFC is going to try to protect McGregor in his next fight. And Nate Diaz is a guy that we've already seen beat McGregor. So it's rolling the dice if you have him fight Nate again right now. And then McGregor's, loser of that fight, what does that really mean? And the winner of that fight, what does that really mean? Because like you said, we haven't seen Nate in a while either. So I think that's why. It's not that Diaz has fallen out of favor with anyone. It's just, what are you talking about, man?
Let's move on. before you freak out on another fan out here. Let's keep going. What's next?
From Enemic, ENYMK1 from the MMA fighting comments, Tito Ortiz. I'm a fairly new fan of MMA, so wasn't watching in Tito's prime. But even before I got into the sport, Tito was one of the few I'd heard of, and therefore it was a surprise to see how Tito was viewed within the sport. I expected him to be revered as a legend, but it seems he's a bit of a joke figure. Was this always the case? Or if not, when did it shift? It's a good question, actually.
That's actually a really good question. And joke figure is a little hard. I don't think people view him as a joke figure as much, but there's definitely a comical sense of it, like an element to him. And I think that swings definitely changed, or at least started to change probably around the turn of the decade, right? Because there was a time where he was basically the man. And then from 2006 to 2014, like he went on a streak where maybe he won like 1 fight out of 10 or something like that. And that was the Ryan Bader submission that no one ever saw coming. So he just went on an incredibly bad losing streak towards the end of right before his first retirement. And all throughout that, man, like you've heard him speak. I think a lot of it's coming from that as well as the losing, because he's not the most articulate public speaker, and he has several infamous moments, whether it's the him commentating Affliction, which the montage of all of his various Affliction work that night when he was commentating that, and in the various flubs is always a hilarious watch. Or I mean, there was the press conference he did with Chris Cyborg where he was trying to be like the Dana White figure for her, and that was also very painful. There's just a lot of moments you can go back and really just kind of laugh at things he said. And not in the good way. So I think that's where a lot of it originated, because you have to remember also like what he's done in Bellator since 2014. That's been pretty impressive, to be honest, man. That kind of rewrote how people feel about him, because before then he was again like 1-8-1 over like a very long half-decade stretch, and he's been pretty dominant in Bellator before he retired again. So that kind of rewrote and re-put him in a place where people would remember, like, oh yeah, Tito Ortiz is like a legitimate legend of this sport, pioneer. Like you can pour accolades onto him. But I think that losing streak and all of the various out of the cage foibles, that's kind of where the narrative started turning for him a little bit.
Yeah, it is a bit unfortunate. I see what the commenter is asking, because yeah, like Tito's like there are all these clips out there, and Liddell's been posting them on his Instagram of Tito kind of putting his foot in his mouth, and Tito is the king of malaprops. He's the king of malapropism.
I mean, we talk about it on the show, the wine and the cheese thing. Like that's an all-time
he misspeaks, and look, it's funny, and I think he has a good sense of humor about it too. I think he knows that he's not the most eloquent public speaker, but he tries hard. And look, the guy again is one of the most influential, popular, best fighters in UFC history, and one of the guys that the UFC was built upon. And I do hope that does come out, and that is remembered as much, I mean, more than him, you know, his slips of the tongue, which are frequent. But the guy is obviously like, if you had like an MMA Mount Rushmore, he's in the conversation. You know what I mean? He's one of the best ever.
Yeah. So hey, moving on from the did you have anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Moving on on the MMA fighting page, this is coming from loyal listener Protein215, who has two questions. Which upcoming fight, either officially booked or being talked about, are you most looking forward to, and why? And if you could pick one, only one, what is the change you would most like to see in the UFC in 2019? Very thankful for you guys. And hey, thank you for that. I'll give you mine real quick. My fight I most want to see in 2019, and you already know what I'm going to say, is Tony Ferguson versus Khabib Nurmagomedov. That is the fight that defines the lightweight GOAT in my mind. Both of these guys are on tears like we've never seen before in that division. I need to see that fight. I hope I see that fight. The one change that I would like to see, give me that 165-pound division, boy. 55, 65, 75. Let's do it. You guys are already getting rid of flyweight. That was the excuse. Now you don't have that excuse. I want to see this.
The fight that I'm most looking forward to seeing that's already booked is Jon Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson at UFC 232 on December 29th. That was probably the first fight, was probably my favorite fight in MMA history, at least on the top 3 or 5 list. And I cannot wait to see how that all plays out with Jon Jones coming back, with Gustafsson coming back. That's just a phenomenal fight to me. I love it, and I can't wait to see what those guys are able to do. Runner-up goes to Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Valentina Shevchenko, which is coming up here in just a couple weeks in Toronto at UFC 231. I think that's a phenomenal women's fight. As far as a change in 2019, I would love to see the UFC move like 85% of their roster up a weight class and implement fully the California State Athletic Commission 10-point plan, almost a one championship type overhauling of the weight cutting system. That's what I would like to see.
That well said. I want to add also, last one from me. Can we make these broadcasts not 8 hours long?
That's a good one.
I feel like that helps everybody. I don't know. I feel like that's a common complaint. Can maybe wish for that for Christmas.
Maybe not 13 fights on a card.
You go full Oscar, go 18 fights.
You never go full Oscar, Shaun. Never go full Oscar.
All right, Mark, what's next?
Shaun Al-Shatti. From Duncan Hills on the MMA fighting comments. This is a very long comment, so
summarize it.
LDR. How hard done by should Stipe feel? What? Is that a colloquialism in another part of the country that I just don't understand?
How hard done by with all dashes connected in it. Yeah, I don't know.
Basically, to summarize what this question is asking is, Stipe Miocic feels like he deserves that rematch against Daniel Cormier. He hasn't gotten it to this far. Derek Lewis got it. Brock Lesnar might get it next. Is Stipe really being done dirty, even though he was knocked out by Cormier in the first round in July? I think that's pretty much the summary of what Duncan Hills is trying to say. Hard done by. I usually have my steaks hard done by.
Wait. Do You don't get well done steaks.
No, I'm making a joke, Shaun.
Okay, but you can't joke about that kind of thing. I was about to just shut this program off and never do this again if you were getting well done steaks.
I would never get a well done steak. That is ridiculous.
Oh my God. I know a buddy of mine, actually 2 friends of mine, get well done steaks, and we've been at a steakhouse with them, and both of them got it. And I nearly lost my mind. I've never been more embarrassed of my friends ever in my life.
I would have gotten up and left.
Smash their face into the plate when it comes. Stipe. So, I mean, just factually, like if you look at generally his accomplishments, of course he's being hard done by, to use your turn of phrase. I mean, he's the greatest heavyweight champion the UFC's ever seen. Very much like a Jose Aldo situation, he deserved an instant rematch. If anybody deserved an instant rematch, it's him. Although I do not feel as much sympathy for him as I did for Jose Aldo, because his situation was very different in that when he was heavyweight champion, he did not play the game at all when it came to sort of the promotional side of the game, of doing, going out there and actively trying to promote his cards, going out there and actively trying to promote himself. His interviews were very difficult to get anything out of. I know people in the media, and you probably do as well, Marc, who literally turned down interviews with the heavyweight champion of the world while he was in the middle of his reign, just because he wasn't going to give you anything. He very much shut down in most of his interviews and just really wasn't willing to play the game, which is unfortunate because he's a fairly engaging guy when you get him off camera. But as soon as the camera's on, he just shuts down. So in that sense, I can't feel too bad, man, because this is kind of what happens, right? Like if you're that guy who's that historic figure who's done great things, but you're just not willing to play the game the UFC needs you to play, to promote these cards and get big numbers for these cards, if they move on from you when you lose that belt, that's just kind of what happens, man. Like it's not right, and he deserves that rematch, but that's just kind of what happens.
Here's the thing, I think, with Miocic and Cormier. Cormier fought Derek Lewis, and we just saw Derek Lewis 4 weeks earlier before that fight get beaten up for 3 rounds by Volkov. Yes, he won with a Hail Mary knockout, and we all agree that he had the resume to deserve a title shot. But that memory of him getting beat up was still in everyone's heads, and Miocic was the long-standing heavyweight champion, and he didn't get the rematch. So people are saying, well, why is Derek Lewis getting this shot over Stipe? Worse yet, I think this is coming up because Cormier's next opponent seems like it's going to be Brock Lesnar, who has not really won a fight. I mean, he beat Marc, but that fight was overturned, so he hasn't officially won a fight in a very long time. He's coming off the USADA suspension for a positive drug test, and then he's going to go right into a title fight with Daniel Cormier. So I understand why Stipe Miocic would be like, what are you talking about? This guy just pops hot. He hasn't won in years, and he's getting the title shot over me. So I understand that perspective that Miocic has. It isn't so much that, hey, Stipe should get this immediate rematch. It's, I guess, the contenders who are being put over him in this hierarchy. So I get it. On the other hand, the UFC is a business, and Daniel Cormier is trying to make that money. And Brock Lesnar is going to make way more money than Stipe Miocic for the reasons that you just said. So that's the situation that we're in. And it sucks that this is the way it is in MMA and in the UFC, but they're always going to do what is going to be the best for their wallet in the end. And if that means having Brock Lesnar coming off a 2-year or a 1-year suspension from USADA, getting right into a title fight with Daniel Cormier, that's what they're going to do.
Yeah. And then just to address the last part of that question, he asked what happens next for him if it's not DC. DC is more or less probably going to retire very early next year. At that point, that belt is vacant, assuming he beats Brock. I would be stunned if Stipe wasn't right there in that vacant title shot against maybe Curtis Blaydes or if he gets through in Ngannou or Velasquez or something like that. Moving on. Max Holloway.
From the MMA fighting comments. Trumbo.
You got it. You're going.
I'm going. Max at UFC 231. Is there any word on Max Holloway's status? A little over 2 weeks out from the title fight against Ortega, of course. How apprehensive are you guys about the fight week lead up to this one? And given how publicized Max's health issues were for his last fight and the failed weight cut at UFC 223, I would think that the doctors and commission will be looking extremely carefully at Max and pull him much easier than normal fighters. Thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, so far, all the word we've gotten out of Max Holloway's camp is that he's looked tremendous, man. It seems as though, from what they're saying, that he has made a full recovery from whatever happened. I don't know if we've ever really gotten word on what actually happened, like an official diagnosis. If we have, I missed it. But I don't think it's come. But the word is he's looked really good. It seems like he's doing well. If you see him speak now, he seems like the old Max Holloway. I'm going to be at that fight. I'm going to be in Toronto in a couple of weeks. So I am really looking forward to that fight. Him versus Ortega is one of the best fights of this year, and I just can't wait for it. But yeah, to answer the question, he's seems as though he's doing well, and they're certainly putting him through extra medical hoops that he has to jump through to ensure that he is okay for this fight. They're not just throwing him back out there.
Yeah, Holloway has said a couple of times in interviews leading up that he has had to do extra medicals from the Ontario Commission and the UFC. Hopefully everyone is exercising caution and Holloway is 100% healthy as far as, the brain goes, because that was pretty scary back in July.
Yeah. Last one coming from the MMA Fighting comments section, and then we will move to Twitter. And this is a true or false. So let's do this real quick, Mark. Thunderkiss 65 is asking, true or false? Number 1, there will be no Golden Boy MMA. Number 2, I say true because I think the pay-per-view income from this is going to be very disappointing.
I say true.
Yeah. Number 2, Diaz finishes Masvidal. I say false.
False.
I like how definitive you were with that. It's nice.
False.
DC versus Brock happens after WrestleMania. So when's WrestleMania, Mark?
April. First week in April.
So false. I say false.
False. Absolutely. I think DC is still going to stick to that March plan, even though the UFC seems like now they want to kind of extend that a little bit and have him not retire in March, like he says.
Yeah. Did you see Dana White say he'd like to get 3 more fights?
3 more fights. I don't know, man. I don't know.
3 more. That's basically a whole year.
Selfishly, I would love that, but you got to let the guy do what he's got to do.
That's basically a whole year. So yeah.
More.
Number 4, Overeem loses to that guy that nobody knows who he is and retires. I say false. I think Alistair gets it done this weekend.
That guy, by the way, is Sergey Pavlovich, and that's the co-main event of UFC Beijing on Saturday. I also say false. I think Overeem wins that fight.
Number 5, Chael Sonnen fights the winner of Tito versus Chuck next. I say false.
I'm gonna say a push for this one. I think that if Chuck Liddell wins on Saturday, it's a possibility we could see Chuck versus Chael, and I would watch that fight. I'm not gonna lie, that would be pretty interesting. So I'm gonna say a push on that one.
You're shameless, Marc Raimondi.
I certainly am.
Last one, Ricardo Lamas being ranked at number 11 is absurd. I don't know. I guess I don't know. That feels kind of right to me. He finally righted his ship. He's good. He got to work his way up. I'd push on that. I'd say that's fine.
I will say true. I think Ricardo Lamas is definitely much better than the 11th best in the world at featherweight. That's just
it's just weird with the rankings though, right? Because Josh Emmett is 9.
Right, Emmett obviously beat Lamas.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's difficult. Okay, let's transition to Twitter. We got a ton. We got a ton of Twitter questions today. So let's try our hardest to be brief on these, Mr. Loquacious Marc Raimondi.
Watch your mouth.
Hey, that's a couple.
Keep this a PG-13 show, Shaun.
First one coming from Brian Kelleher, our own Brian Kelleher,
Boom.
Bantamweight contender.
What up?
Brian Kelleher.
Long Island in the house.
He wants to know what is the most optimal next fights for the Diaz brothers at this exact moment. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that I would love to see the Nate Diaz versus Dustin Poirier fight.
Yeah, that was my answer.
That fight. But I think I still think there's a possibility that Diaz does wait this out and get the McGregor fight next. I still think that's a possibility, and I would not mind seeing Nate Diaz fight Anderson Silva. Nate Diaz versus Anderson Silva. Book it.
You just had to do it.
Book it.
Yeah, I say Dustin Poirier. And I'm not sure about Nick Diaz, man. I don't know that.
I told you, Nick versus Carlos Condit's the fight.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. You're right. I forgot about your brilliance.
See?
I often forget about your brilliance. It's so hard. Yeah. Those are the two. Those are the two I would want for the Diaz brothers. What's next?
Thanks, Kelleher. Next from Mike LeBlanc from the Twitter. Since this garbage press conference, and I believe he's talking about Liddell versus Ortiz 3 from Tuesday, since this garbage press conference didn't answer them, do you know the following? How many rounds is Liddell Ortiz 3? What are they fighting in? De La Hoya has made several octagon references, but I'm assuming he's just ignorant. I will answer this quickly. It's a 3-round fight. Main event, of course, on Saturday night at the Forum in Inglewood, California. And they're fighting in, I've been told, they are fighting in a 6-sided cage. So they are fighting in a hexagon. Is that right? Hexagon.
Yeah,
right?
that'd be a hexagon.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, because if it's an 8-sided cage, I'm pretty sure that's trademarked. Like,
oh yeah, they can't do that.
Yeah.
They can't.
Can you imagine that fight for 5 rounds?
No, I cannot.
The deep water 5th round of that fight would just be it would be something. Let's move on. Next one's coming from Aegeon Sandoval on Twitter, who wants to know, is Johnny Walker we need to take a moment and appreciate how damn good that name is. That's not his real name. Also, if you read our own Guilherme Cruz, he had a nice little feature on him that was detailing, I guess, the really difficult camp that Johnny Walker had. He basically didn't have a camp. He didn't really have a job. He was just kind of having a free flow. He said his real name is Walker Johnny. And then he reversed it because he realized that MMA fans would like it. And it's like, oh man, that's good. The way to go, dude. I like it. So is Johnny Walker a prospect that you can put up against a top 10 guy right away? I say no. And I see a lot of people throwing him against Ovince St. Preux and things like that. I say give him one more, man. Give him one more. Let him try to style on somebody. And then you can really start building some hype around this guy, man. I understand 205 is pretty shallow, but like, that's the way you ruin a prospect, is seeing if they're not ready yet, and putting them in too much too soon. I feel like he's maybe not there yet, but one more and I could be sold on him. He is a giant man for 205.
Yes. Yeah, I think top 10 is too soon, because top 10, even the latter half of top 10, we're talking about guys like Corey Anderson and Dominic Reyes and Jimmy Manoa, and those are very, very tough matchups, veterans. I think that might be too soon. Build him up, like you said, and maybe keep him on these Brazil, South America shows for a little bit, and then have him, maybe next year, mid to late next year, have him fight someone in that top 10. But yeah, let's let him get some highlights under his belt.
Also, let's get this guy a nickname, like Black
His
Label.
name is Johnny Walker. He doesn't need a freaking nickname. That is a nickname.
Is like Black Label too obvious? Like, is that a little too much going into the gimmick?
He doesn't need a nickname. That's a nickname. It's Johnny Walker. That's already his nickname. It's not his real name. By definition, that's a nickname.
Switching from Walker Johnny to Johnny Walker was best decision he's ever made in his life.
That's genius. That's good.
I just must say that how damn impressive was that knockout, man? Of
oh god, that was scary,
dude. The Thai plum elbows, just 2 elbows. That was some Anderson Silva stuff. That was amazing to watch, man. That came out of nowhere too. That was a really enjoyable fight to watch.
Also, Johnny Walker has charisma.
Yes,
coming out of his you know what? I mean, the guy, if you go back and Google Johnny Walker entrance, and there's a video of him.
Yes, good call.
Coming out and doing like a stripper dance to like some, I don't even know, I forget what kind of music it was. I think it was like 90s music. And the guy is incredibly charismatic. Could be a big star if they do it right.
Yeah. Also, I mean, a 6'6" man doing backflips is not something.
Yeah, man, so athletic, crazy.
All right, next up.
Yes.
Coming from.
I got this one.
Oh, you got it. All right.
I do. From Natraj Kavarayani. Fuck. Kavarayani.
Yeah, you have it.
Natraj Kavi. I got really ambitious. Natraj Kavirayani. Ngannou is fighting in China, and there is so little promotion of it in UFC's social media. Some blame should go on the number of events they have, one every week right now, but also have they decided to rein in his praise a little bit after one bad loss and one stale fight?
What was the question?
Have they reined in, I guess, his push in Ngannou, because they have him fighting, on this card in Beijing, and it's not getting much social media love. Well,
I have more to say on this later. You kind of stole my thunder on that. But Yeah, I mean it feels like the right fight for him though with what he's coming off of. He's coming off 2 losses. His card is buried. I mean, I'm going to say a little bit more about that in a little bit. But
Yeah, you could save it. You could save it. I forgot that was going to be your promo.
It's all good.
Sorry. I'm sorry. God.
It's all good. It's all good. Hey, let's keep going. Next question coming from Chewy Sanchez, who writes, serious question for Marc Raimondi.
Oh.
Is Anderson Silva next for Ponzinibbio?
Of course.
Kidding.
Of course he is. What are you talking about?
Just kidding. Woodley Covington is most likely next. Should he take on Wonderboy while that plays out?
Yeah, Ponzinibbio is an interesting case because he's won a bunch in a row and he's got some good wins now. Obviously, coming off that dominant win over Neil Magny. I think that maybe like the RDA Usman winner could be a possible opponent for him next.
I could not disagree with you more.
Really?
If Usman wins that fight, he
should get a title shot.
He does not need to do anything else. That is at some point, what are we doing making this guy win 40,000 fights in a row?
Right.
Ponzinibbio is in the same
like Leon Edwards. But the guy needs someone ahead of him. He's been fighting guys behind him this whole time.
I like Wonderboy, man. I like his proposal for Wonderboy. That's a nice, interesting fight.
Yeah, could be. All right, I'm down.
Because that's what Wonderboy has to do right now. He has to just take on all the guys trying to charge for this title because he's going to have to win a lot in a row or have Tyron lose to get this.
True. All right, you sold me.
All right. Next, coming from David Edmond, who writes, which flyweights do you see having or do you foresee having an impact up at 135?
It's a good question. I mean, first of all, we don't know all the flyweights who are going up there. We're not 100% sure yet. I believe Sergio Pettis is announced. I think he's the guy that can make some waves at 135. Ray Borg, I believe, said this week he's going to 135. I'd like to see like a Brandon Moreno go there, but I'm not sure what his status is. There are a few guys.
He was taken off of the UFC rankings.
He was taken off the UFC rankings. I'm not sure what that means but he still says he's under contract. So I don't really know the situation there, but I think he's a guy that could do well there.
It would be, let me jump in real quick. It would be a big mistake for the UFC to cut the Assassin Baby.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Combate Americas would pick him up so fast.
Oh yeah. Huge. Tim Elliott is a really big 125er who I think could do well at 135. And the champion of that weight class, Henry Cejudo. I mean, that guy cuts a lot of weight. I think he'd be a very good 135er. There's a few guys I think that could be in the mix from 125.
Yeah. What do you got next?
All right. From Tragic Bronson, one of our longtime listeners and viewers. Should athletic commissions consider a rule along the lines of not allowing fighters who can't physically make it to the scale on their own free will? Sorry, I had a stroke for a second. On their own free will from competing 24 hours later. Although things turned out in favor for Cynthia Calvillo Friday morning, it was an alarming weigh-in.
So it's an interesting topic, right? Because if you listen to Cynthia, she said that she wasn't she basically told all the media, us as well on the MMA Hour on Monday, that she wasn't actually shaky. It was more of an issue of that they didn't want her to, that she was concerned that she was basically going to give everyone a free show because of where the towel was or the hoop. I don't know how much I buy that. Just watching that, it seemed like she was definitely struggling. Not allowing fighters to fight would certainly be one step you could take. I don't know that taking steps forward to increase punishment on people who miss weight is the way to approach this, because no one's actively trying to miss weight. Like, they're already feeling bad about the situation. They didn't want to be there. They're already embarrassed. If you don't let them fight, then you also punish their opponent. Their opponent doesn't get a chance to make money. Their opponent basically loses lots of money because they've invested time in their training camp and they didn't get paid for it. If there's a system where you don't allow them to fight, but then you can pay the opponent a win bonus and the show purse, just like as if they won the fight, then I think I'd be more in line with that. But I just don't know if punishing fighters who miss weight more than they're already punished is the solution, because no one's actively trying to do this.
I don't know what the solution is. I mean, this is a situation that we've been talking about for years at this point. And I think that the whole weight miss thing, I think that there really should be a rule, kind of like the CSAC rule, where if you miss weight twice, you're going up. You know, you got to go up to the next weight class unless you can, a doctor can show that you can do it in a healthy way to get down there. So Calvillo only missed the one time. It was scary, but it seemed like she was okay for Saturday night. Those kind of things do get people very worried because it is very dangerous to have a bad weight cut like that, to deplete yourself of nutrients and fluids, and then fight 36 hours later where you're getting hit in the head. So it all worked out well this time, but I don't want to think about what could happen other times if it doesn't go as well. So it's a scary situation. I don't know the answer. There have been a lot of the one thing I will say is that it's not just any one thing. It needs to be a whole host of regulations that change this. Just one thing, adding more punishment won't change anything. Just adding more weight classes won't change anything. There needs to be a whole reform of how we look at the situation. Unless otherwise things are not going to change for the better.
Yeah. Let's hit a couple more and then we'll do promo and get out of here. What do you think?
Yeah. Can you read one because my Twitter apparently just oh wait, no, it's back.
I got you. Do you need me?
Yeah, go for it.
This one's coming from Blake on Twitter. Do you have any plans to incorporate that sick song made by the fan in Europe? Our Denmark friend. I mean, I would love to incorporate it. I don't know. I really want to. Like, we're kind of limited and hamstrung right now with the production of this show because we have to do it over Google Hangouts because it's just me and him. So it's both of us. We have to kind of go back and forth. So I'm not technically good enough to understand if there's ways we can improve the show with that kind of situation, like give it an intro and an outro using Google Hangouts. It seems like we're pretty limited in that regard. I'd like to improve the podcast form of it and actually put some production behind the podcast because right now I know it's kind of lacking. So maybe in that regard we'd like to use it, but we're definitely would love to use it at some point moving forward once maybe we get someone with some knowledge of this type of thing because it's very out of our element. I have no idea how to produce shows like that. Yeah,
same. Eventually we'll get to that point where we can add some better technology and bells and whistles. It's a pretty scaled back, bare bones show, but we appreciate the support anyway.
Absolutely. You got one?
I mean, I see a lot of the same things. Oh, okay. This is a question for me. I'm going to read it to myself. Zuha, question for Marc. Any UFC fighter can replicate what Becky Lynch has been able to do with her brand with WWE, from being a workhorse to an absolute star. What do you think, Shaun?
I have no thoughts in this matter.
I would say, I mean, it's certainly possible for UFC fighters to do that. It's just not easy to do. It feels like the stars that have been built in this sport have been stars from the very jump, where we knew Ronda Rousey was going to be a big star right away, and then she ended up being one of the biggest draws in UFC history. Same thing with Conor McGregor. We kind of saw it right away. It is rare for a fighter to go from like a journeyman or kind of like a Fight Pass prelim fighter or an FS1 prelim fighter, and then all of a sudden become like a big draw. So it's hard to do because there are different vehicles at play here, and I can't think of one person off the top of my head who could be that.
Yeah,
because the audiences are also very, very different.
Now I'm thinking about I thought the question had to do with wrestling. Now I'm thinking about it, and I can't really think of one either. Like I can think of guys like maybe a Rafael dos Anjos who really took the slow road and worked their way up from being that guy that was kind of on the very beginning of the prelims to now is like this world-renowned person.
Right.
But I don't. Yeah, star power is a weird thing, man. Like you get examples, Israel Adesanya, right? Like his first fight, people are already talking about like, hey, maybe this is a guy. Second fight, third fight, same type of thing. It's an escalation where you can see it coming. We just talked about Johnny Walker. I think that's the same type of situation where these guys, these women will jump out at you the moment you see him if it's somebody who has that sort of potential. I don't know of anybody.
I'll give you someone that I just thought of who's kind of done it in a way. Nate Diaz. He was kind of a guy that he did it himself. He did it all himself. He took the opportunity after beating Michael Johnson. Look, he was making some horrible purse for that Michael Johnson fight. He won that fight
18-18 or 20-20 or something like that.
Horrible. He got the mic, and man, did he make the most of that time on the mic. We couldn't hear it initially because there were so many curses on Fox, but I mean that went viral what he said, and that work on the mic ended up getting him that McGregor fight. as a fill-in just a few months later when Rafael dos Anjos fell out. And then since then, Nate Diaz has been one of the biggest stars in the sport. So he went from just kind of another guy in the lightweight division, had a cult following as one of the Diaz brothers, of course. So people knew who he was, but he wasn't like a pay-per-view main event type guy who could draw on pay-per-view. And then that whole thing happened, and now he has become that guy. So I think that that's a good example of someone like Becky Lynch, who was kind of middle of the card person who kind of did it herself and wasn't really pushed by WWE, almost at UFC, by WWE, and she's developed this amazing following through a lot of her social media, that type of stuff. So that would be a good comparison that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's a good call. I hadn't considered Nate. Also, he really had a unique circumstance with the Conor fight in general. Like, it's rare to get those kind of confluence of events where you're gonna meet this blockbuster superstar and this last second thing. Like, it was very unique, and I don't think that's something that can be replicated, to be honest.
Right. It's very hard to do. You could do something similar to that,
sure,
by doing it yourself, but the things need to fall in your and you can't do it all by yourself. Things gotta kind of fall for you as well. You gotta have a little bit of luck involved.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's do the promo. And then we'll get out of here. I'll go first because I know you have you have a little bit to talk about for the fans. It'll be good. So let me go. And so, hey, Marc, just off the top of your head, do you know what time UFC Beijing starts this weekend?
I got to be honest with you, I do not know. I assume that it's probably like 1 a.m. Pacific, if I had to guess.
Prelims start at 3:15 a.m. ET.
So I was off by 1 hour.
Yeah. Main card starts at 6:30 a.m. ET.
Fantastic. So it starts 3:30 in the morning.
Main card for you. For me, it's 4:30. For you, it's 3:30. Yeah.
That's right, because you guys don't do the daylight savings time thing, huh?
Didn't you guys vote to not do it?
Yeah, but it hasn't been implemented yet. So
yeah, it's a lot better when you don't do it. But I digress. So basically, the UFC is seemingly trying to hide the fact that Francis Ngannou and Curtis Blaydes are fighting this weekend. We talked about this just very briefly in the Twitter section, but there's been virtually no promotion for it. I wouldn't blame someone if they had no idea that this fight was happening. But hey, I have it on good authority that this fight will happen. It will actually happen. It does exist. And I'll tell you what, man, this is one of my sneaky gems for the coming year-end slate. We have a lot of good stuff coming up to end this year. But I love this matchup, man. This Curtis Blaydes versus Francis Ngannou matchup. This is one I called for back in June after Curtis Blaydes did terrible, terrible things to Alistair Overeem. And to me, the reason I think why this fight interests me so much, other than just the obvious, is this fight really just perfectly illustrates one of the, I think, maybe more unfortunate parts of the fight game for the athletes, but also just one of the things that as fans and observers of the sport makes MMA so genuinely exciting just to follow. And that's how fleeting narratives really are in MMA and how unforgivingly quick things can change. Because take a step back for a moment and remember how we thought of these two men at the start of this year, January 2018. Francis Ngannou was basically the golden boy, right? Like, he was the unbeatable beast, the phenom who could do no wrong and was about to usher in this new era of heavyweight violence. Curtis Blaydes, on the other hand, was just kind of a background figure, man. Like, he was a good prospect, yes, and someone to definitely keep an eye on, yes, but no one was out here writing long think pieces about how Curtis Blaydes is the future of this division. And yet, after only 2 fights from both men, they've both only fought twice this year. Those 2 fights, those narratives have completely been torn apart and flipped upside down, man. Francis Ngannou now, after the losses to Stipe and Derek Lewis, it feels silly to say and it's strange and it's reactionary, but somehow this fight feels as though it's almost like a make or break for him. And that's silly, and it doesn't really make sense because he's still so young in his career, and there's no way on earth the UFC ever would cut him, even just off 3 straight losses, because Lord knows Scott Coker would love to get him some hands on some Francis Ngannou. Can you imagine Francis Ngannou versus Fedor? Like, I would watch that. But perception does matter in this game, especially when it comes to just the opportunities an athlete can get. And I think the perception around Francis Ngannou is going to take another really dramatic hit if he goes out there and just gets wrestle-dominated by Curtis Blaydes like he did against Stipe. And then contrasting the man for Blaydes, this fight is everything, right? Like, this is a chance to get vengeance against the one man who defeated him and also a chance to establish himself as sort of that next guy in line all in one fell swoop. Because when Daniel Cormier retires, there is going to be a free-for-all at the top of that division. We mentioned it earlier today. And a win here on Saturday all but guarantees Curtis Blaydes a spot in that discussion when the time comes. So I love this, man. High stakes, heavy implications on both sides, a backstory that actually matters with these two guys having fought before, and just two genuine mountains of men with very similar but different versions of their own form of death touch, both very capable of inflicting serious, like massive bodily harm on each other. I feel like this is as good as it gets, ladies and gentlemen, for a throwaway card. So even if I have to wake up at 4:30 a.m. to watch it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that fight. I don't know if I love the timing of that fight, but I do love the idea of those guys fighting. I do feel like Ngannou probably could have used a little bit of a build up, a tune up fight after the two losses, and also that really bizarre loss to Derek Lewis in July. But anyway, we ready for this Thanksgiving giveaway that we're doing?
Let's do it.
You ready for this? Okay, so Fight TV has been kind enough to grant us on the A side at MMAfighting.com 2 free passes to watch Liddell versus Ortiz 3 on Saturday night on, of course, Fight TV pay-per-view. Free. This will be free for you guys. So the winner of this, what you have to do is I'm going to ask you this trivia question about the A side. So this is going to be for loyal followers, loyal viewers, loyal listeners of the A side. And then you can answer this question adding the hashtag the A side on Twitter. And then, but if you answer correctly, you'll be put into a drawing to win the free passes. There'll be 2 free passes, so there'll be 2 winners. So the question.
Hold on. So to enter, just to repeat, you have to tag both of us on Twitter.
Right.
Hashtag the A side.
Correct. Tag both of us on Twitter, hashtag the A side, and then add your answer. And the question is this. So Shaun and I started this show in July, right? After UFC 226.
Yeah.
Since then, I've been in many cities doing this show. How many cities have I done the A side in, and what are they? If you can answer that question, how many cities have I done this show in, and what are they? Because I always say it at the top of every show, where I am, what city I'm in. If you can answer that, tag me, tag Shaun, hashtag the A side on Twitter. You will be put into a drawing to win a free pass to Liddell versus Ortiz 3 on pay-per-view. So please do that. And there you have it. And we'll let you know on Saturday morning Pacific time who is the winner, and I will DM you the information how to claim your prize. And that's it.
Let me add, because it seems daunting initially, it's actually not nearly as many as you'd think.
It's not nearly as many as you think. No, it's not that many. Also, it's pretty easy because all the shows are on MMA Fighting's YouTube page, so you can just kind of scroll back and see where we're at. But yeah, there have been a few cities. How many cities have I been in doing the A side? And what are they? At Marc Raimondi, at Shaun Al-Shatti, hashtag the A side on Twitter. And you could possibly win a free pass to watch Liddell versus Ortiz 3 on Fight TV. Thanks again, Fight TV, for hooking us up with this cool giveaway for Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. And with that, I think that about wraps it up for here. Thank you once again to Fight TV for that. That's a very cool promotion. And hey, man, happy Thanksgiving to all of you North Americans, I guess Americans really, because Canada has their own Thanksgiving. But happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there who celebrates it, to everyone who doesn't care about Thanksgiving. I hope you guys just have a wonderful rest of your week. Enjoy the festivities over the weekend with all the fights. There's a lot of different fights going on. And in the meantime, man, this has been the A Side Live Chat Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Replay of this is going to come up on YouTube almost immediately. It's going to be up on iTunes as well as Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, etc. later today. If it's not on something that you want it to be in terms of where you get your pods, let us know and we'll fix that. But hey, for me, Shaun Al-Shatti and Marc Raimondi over there, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week.